Comics have been playing an ever-increasing role in the world for the last few decades. Not only does it take over the big screen almost every summer, but due to the success of the DC and Marvel animated universes and comic-related live-action series, no matter how loosely based they are, it has invaded the small screen as well. Gone are the days that the general public treats collecting comics books as a niche group of nerds and geeks. However, it can be difficult not only to start collecting comics, but to know when to get a book that may not be in your normal cycle. I am the Namekian, and welcome to my weekly comic videocast, where I take a handful of comics that come out during the week and give spoiler-free recommendations to them, along with providing some background leading up to the current story. Spoilers will occur with the lead-in comics, though I will keep anything big from recent comics to a minimum. While I will be focusing on DC and Marvel comics primarily, I will report on a few series from other vendors as well, and including manga whenever I can. Let's kick off the week with looking at Avengers vs. X-Men number 5. Now, this is Marvel's big, huge summer release series. Though the story has been building for quite some time, it all started in late 2004 with Brian Michael Bendy's Avengers Disassembled. In this story, the Scarlet Witch went crazy, killed off a bunch of the Avengers members, most of which are better now, and ultimately forced the Avengers to disassemble, but not before they took down the Scarlet Witch, who was then taken away by her father Magneto. We didn't have much time after the events of Avengers Disassembled before we had the next big story event in 2005 called House of M. Now, in the story, the Scarlet Witch went crazy again and basically altered reality so that the mutants outnumbered and ruled the non-mutants. Basically a reverse of what currently is present in the real Marvel universe. Now, she also altered the lives and memories and stuff of your Marvel heroes so that basically they got the lives they wanted but had no memory of their lives previous. At the end of the story, basically, Pietro was killed. He's also better now. And in a fit of rage, the Scarlet Witch basically took away, or she returned reality to the way that it was. However, she also removed the X gene from the majority of mutants on the planet, reducing the overall numbers to a small fraction of what they were. The next story came in somewhat more of a recent years called the Messiah Complex, where basically a big, huge, convoluted story involving the Sinister and some other stuff basically resulted in the first birth of a X gene / mutant that occurred since House of M, and that was really what caused all the conflicts and everything else. The series basically ended with Cable taking the child away to the future. Now, the child was then basically named by Cable Hope, in regards to, I think it's either his wife or daughter or something like that. Basically, every woman somewhat in Cable's life had the name of Hope, but whatever. So she was basically trained and brought up to teenage years by Cable, and then we get a lead into the series that occurred before basically the Avengers vs. X-Men called The Second Coming, where both Cable and Hope return to Earth under pursuit by a group of common X-Men villains in control of a bunch of Sentinels, basically. And so we had a huge battle between the two groups, and I think the Avengers had a small role to play in it. And ultimately, it resulted in and Hope returning to the true timeline. And this basically kicked off or led into the current running series, the Avengers versus X-Men. Now, this is something that's been done before. In 1987, there was a series called XMen versus Avengers, which surprisingly had a pretty similar story, at least so far, as what it is currently. In the first 4 episodes or issues of the series, we get your common Marvel setup. Basically, the Phoenix is coming, and the Avengers and X-Men are at odds about what to do. The X-Men's view on it is that the Phoenix is coming and will reestablish the mutant presence on the Earth. I don't think they're planning on it being dominated, or having the mutant population dominate Earth, but basically to return it to how it was previously before the House of M. And the Avengers basically don't want the Phoenix to come and destroy the planet. Apparently, on the way to Earth, the Phoenix has destroyed several planets. So that's kind of what the Avengers are going for. However, the X-Men don't want the Avengers to do what don't want the Avengers to take Hope away and stuff like that. So, of course, a big, huge brawl breaks out. And really, that's the summarization of the first 4 issues. Basically, we get the initial setup, the initial rumble, and then we get the go capture Hope, type of storyline. Your typical. It's a pretty common so far. It's a pretty common Marvel story. As far as collecting the actual story goes, it's kind of getting old, the whole heroes versus hero thing. We're not that far away from the whole Civil War issue or story. We're not that far away from technically the Secret Invasion before we knew it was Skrulls. We had Siege, and we had basically somewhat Fear itself. It's just really old, the whole hero versus hero thing, and would like to have something a little bit new, but it's Marvel. As far as the build-in stories, the Avengers disassembled while longtime Avenger fans probably did not like it, and they definitely didn't like what happened afterwards to the Avengers. It's not a bad story. It kind of loses its appeal when you know for sure that a bunch of the people who died haven't died, but again, that's common in comics, and I'll address that little problem later on. But it may be worth a read, at least a digital buy, if not the trade. The House of M, however, is another story entirely. Overall, it's not that good of a series. Basically, the whole series is Wolverine didn't lose his memory, and he's going around and finding the rest of the heroes, and that's it. In a big, huge, non-important battle at the end. The problem is we knew that reality was altered at the beginning. We knew nothing was going to be permanent, and we knew that nothing was going to come out of it really overly important. Granted, the big change of the lack of mutants on the world, you would think would be a big change, but not really, because all the mutants that we knew and loved and already followed pretty much still had their mutant powers. So basically, just took away the mutants that we didn't know or care about. So it really wasn't that big of a deal. However, the side stories that came along with it, the House of M Fantastic Four, the House of M Spider-Man, the House of M Iron Man, and those stories like that were actually pretty they were pretty entertaining in the what if sense. You know, if this happened, then what would have happened to the characters and so forth. So it, you know, those would definitely be a nice read, but the House of M is definitely not something that I would recommend. The Messiah Complex is another one that basically it's a huge blown out story which could have been done simply in one of the X-Men books, maybe a 4-issue run, and that was it. Everything else is really padding, and it follows your typical Marvel routine of, yeah, we'll have a mediocre, kind of decent build-up, we'll peter out a little bit and have a very anticlimactic ending. You know, basically, the series started off with a new mutant being born, and then it ended with a new mutant being taken away. So ultimately, nothing was really overly done. So that one can be skipped. Now, the Second Coming, I kind of found this to be probably the most enjoyable out of the four. It had pretty good action. It had a pretty good story overall, and while it didn't really have a big, huge ending, it at least had an ending that, you know, changed things a little bit. So that's basically the only one that you really need to read to know what's going on in Avengers vs. X-Men. The rest will pretty much be explained to you if you start reading the series. But so, you know, if you want to know the background, then the Second Coming is a good one to get if you have to choose only one of them. The next comic to look at is Invincible Iron Man number 518. Now, I have not been a long-term Iron Man fan. He just wasn't really overly an interesting character to me until Volume 4 in 2004 came out, which was basically a new series that came out after the Avengers Disassembled storyline. The story kicked off with Extremis, which was basically, how should I say, the introduction to the modern day Iron Man suit, where he's basically nanotechnology or something like that, in which he can basically think, and he'll get an underlining suit and then an armor and stuff like that. Overall, the entire story has been very entertaining. In fact, I would even argue to say that so far, with a few hit and misses, the entire series for Volume 4 has been well worth a read. So if you're looking for, you know, if you're looking for a pretty good series to jump on board with, then Iron Man, the Invincible Iron Man, is definitely one to start picking up. Now, issue 518 is continuing a story that started in 516, so you can probably find those two pretty easily as back issues. However, there was a lot of stuff that happened before that that was used as kind of a build-up. Now, during the events, or after the events of Civil War, in which basically we had the Iron Man team and Cap team ended, Iron Man was more or less promoted as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., taking over for Nick Fury. Due to the events of Secret Invasion, however, basically Stark was replaced with Norman Osborn. Odd choice. And basically Iron Man was declared an enemy of the state and was pretty much hunted down, which led into the somewhat really interesting story of Stark Disassemble, where Stark basically went around the globe, more or less erasing his memory like a hard drive, so that when he does get captured by Norman Osborn, he wouldn't be able to tell Norman all the secret identities of the heroes and so forth. It also was the series that brought Maria Hill to light, which is kind of a new Marvel character. She was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. for quite a while, but she actually came into her own during a lot of these Iron Man stories, and she's actually a pretty good new Marvel character. So good, in fact, that she was actually that assistant in the Avengers movie to Nick Fury. So, it was a pretty good story for that part alone. And then we had Fear itself. Definitely a pretty weak storyline overall in the Marvel, I guess, in terms of Marvel stories, and it didn't do Iron Man any favors either. However, during the story, Iron Man Tony basically got drunk, and this was captured by this information was captured by a lot of his long-term villains, such as the Mandarin, Stane, basically the son of Obadiah Stane, and most importantly, the wife and believe the granddaughter or daughter of Justine Hammer and Sasha Hammer. So basically you have outside of the Mandarin, you have the offsprings of some sort to Iron Man's old villains. Basically the villains that were in the two Iron Man movies, and they've been for a very long time plotting against him, causing things to happen that would ruin his reputation and stuff like that, which leads us to the Invincible Iron Man 516 at the start of the story, The Longest Road, where basically Stark has been beaten down pretty badly. He's got something of a leash approved by the U.S. government, and a lot more stuff I can go into as far as backstory goes. But really, the story has been very good from the start. Even the previous story to this lead up has been incredibly good. So definitely, if you want a new series to pick up, start with Iron Man 516, and they're on 518 now, and you won't be disappointed. It's generally pretty good stories and so forth. Yeah, there's a lot of it that has been done already before in Iron Man books, but it is refreshing to actually see something exciting happen with a character after so long. Now, the last book that we'll take a look at is The Winter Soldier #6. Now, the Winter Soldier is Bucky, Cap's partner from way back in World War II. Basically, Bucky was captured by the Russians and put in some sort of a cryogenic stasis, and only brought out to be sort of used as a weapon for Russia, a kind of a secret op weapon for Russia. Kind of think Born Identity, but Russian. And in the Cap book, Volume 5, which is also a offspring of the Avengers Disassembled, and also up until recently has been an actually pretty good series. I would recommend the trade, especially for some of those earlier stories, like Out of Time and the Winter Soldier story and stuff like that. Incredibly good writing. Even afterwards, when Bucky temporarily took over being Captain America, even some of those stories were actually very well told, but I'll get into that in a moment. Basically, Bucky returned basically Cap was able to sort of more or less restore his memory, and Bucky became a good guy. Now, at the end of the Marvel event Civil War, which was, again, another pointless story, or very out of character pointless story, Captain America was killed, or Steve Rogers was killed. He's better now. And Bucky was more or less forced to take up the banner of Captain America, more or less to prevent anyone else from taking up the title. And this led, again, into some very good stories with Bucky as Cap. If for nothing else, it's something new. It's not Steve Rogers, being Cap, which we've got tons of issues already of. But like in true blue fashion, anything new and exciting can't stay in comics. So one of the more or less results to the storyline Fear itself, Bucky was supposedly killed, and Steve Rogers took up the Captain America mantle once more. However, Bucky was not killed. He survived it. However, he is underground. Currently, I don't think really anyone not too many people in the Marvel Universe knows that he's around. And with the help of the Black Widow, he's basically going around and taking out other soldiers like him that the Russians brainwashed and planted in America. So that's where the series pretty much starts. It's a build up to what happened in Captain America, the actual series, but so far the issues 1 through 5 have been incredibly entertaining. Again, it's kind of like Jason Bourne. It's your spy versus spy type of a thing. Bucky doesn't really have any superpowers, and neither does the Black Widow. He's not Batman or anything else like that, but it is kind of the covert op type of a storyline, and again, it's really refreshing in terms of Marvel. And issue number 6 will pretty much continue that story. However, the art direction and story direction will change a little bit due to the shift in the creative team. Overall, it's still supposedly a good book, but it's too early to tell where this is going to go. I would definitely recommend picking up the first 5 or 6 issues. I believe there's at least a trade out on the first group. If you like the covert op and stuff, and you don't really like the whole fisticuffs, then you're really gonna enjoy this series. And that'll do it for my first week. It was a pretty light week. Really, there wasn't a whole lot released. It could have something to do with the fact that the Memorial Day holiday or something kind of hurt it. But there just wasn't a big, huge release. And sadly, all 3 that I did were Marvel. Normally, I generally have a few DC books in there as well, but it was just a light week. Now, kind of let me know what you think. I know I'm not going into the comics, and that's not really what I'm trying to do. It's actually quite difficult to get it digitalized without tearing apart the comic. And using the digital subscriptions is actually kind of illegal. So that's kind of why I'm only going with the covers. Again, I just wanting to explain the series. Now, moving forward, if you want me to go into more detail about the previous issue, like the 517 for Iron Man or whatever, let me know. I kind of want to avoid doing anything overly recent, just in case if someone hasn't read it yet. But if you want me to do like the previous story or the previous issue or something like that, more detailed, then fine. I'll that's something I would be willing to do. So kind of let me know. And I will be trying to also get these out as soon as I can. Some weeks, obviously, if it's a big week, I won't be able to get them out on Wednesday or Thursday is kind of what I'm shooting for. But on big weeks, it may take me longer to actually do what I need to do to get the information and such. This week is kind of late due to E3 and a bunch of other stuff that I got going on. So anyway, thanks for watching. And as always, God bless.